Thank you, Deep Roy Clywyd. I would first like to echo the comments of other members in recognising the outstanding contribution that pharmacists have made during the COVID pandemic. Without their commitment and willingness to keep their doors open, our country would have suffered a great deal more, and undoubtedly more lives would have been lost due to COVID-19. I believe everyone here would agree that the trust we place in our pharmacists is well placed, and we should not be fearful of expanding their role within the healthcare sector, in particular the rollout of the clinical community pharmacy service and the ability of pharmacists independently to prescribe medication for common ailments. I welcome, and I know residents in my region welcome, community pharmacies because it increases the ability of some patients to better access appropriate care without the need to visit a GP. While this has the benefit of taking pressure off other parts of the healthcare system, it also means that pharmacy services can be better adapted around patients' needs, and quite significantly, pharmacy teams have more interaction with patients and translate into improved patient understanding of the medicines they take. And this is where I'd like to pick up on my first point. In Wales, we have a significant increase in the dispensing of opioids, which, as we all know, are a class of drug found in the opium poppy plant and are generally prescribed for pain relief and are highly addictive. Some here may be unaware, but opioid prescribing has increased by an average of 30% in Wales in the last 10 years, with almost 1.6 million opioid items being prescribed in Wales just before the pandemic. In Powys alone, they have seen a monumental rise of almost 95% in 10 years. Persistent pain, which much of this opioid prescribing is for, is more prevalent in areas of greater deprivation, as is depression and anxiety, which all add to the pain burden. And while persistent pain is not fixed by these analgesics, it is also not fixed by removing them. Significant people presenting with pain are not usually aware of the numerous problems with these analgesics, most notably that most of them aren't very effective long term. With this in mind, I see that the community pharmacy model presents a major opportunity for the healthcare system to help address this rise in opioid use. Pharmacies could become the first port of call for those suffering pain, which may provide other pain relief pathways without the need for opioids, and given significant training and upskilling of staff, community pharmacies could also be used to effectively review patients who are using opioids as a feedback mechanism for GPs. And this may help the healthcare system to better understand the effects that opioids have on patients. I'm sure that health boards and the Royal Pharmaceutical Society are more than capable to discerning this point for themselves, so I'm therefore interested to know if there have been any active steps in assessing the capacity of community pharmacies to become the first port of call for those suffering with pain. The next point I'd like to pick up that whilst the community pharmacy model has massive potential to expand into areas like pain relief, it only really works if there are significant pharmacists to take on the role. I understand that there is some debate within the pharmacy community because some corporate pharmacists say that they cannot fill all their vacancies due to the shortage of pharmacists and may have to reduce opening hours or close pharmacies. There are indeed significant numbers of registered pharmacists to fill all roles. I understand that this issue is more to do with the unacceptable terms and conditions of some pharmacy contracts, and pharmacists are suffering, as already mentioned, burnout from overwork. Given the disappointing results of the recent Pharmacists Defence Association Safe Working Environment Survey, I think the Welsh Government needs to ably apply considerable more pressure to ensure that high standards of fair pay and fair working conditions are met by pharmacies, and that meeting fair pay and fair working condition standards should be a prerequisite if they are to keep their NHS contracts. Finally, I want to address the issue of dispensing at a loss. In real terms, pharmacies have had big cost increases, particularly with the expense of PPE, which I understand they have not been reimbursed for by the Welsh Government, and also with higher energy prices and increasing costs of drugs. I'm aware that the costs of these drugs, such as certain antidepressants and hormone replacement products, are outstripping the amount the NHS pays the pharmacy for them, which is already predetermined. Unfortunately, this is having major implications because it reduces the money available for pharmacies to reinvest in services, to pay their staff better wages, and it also creates a possibility that pharmacies may not be able to afford to dispense these drugs, which would have wider knock-on effects as patients may not be able to get the medicines they need. Whilst larger and busier pharmacies may be able to weather this storm of rapid cost increases, smaller independent practices may not. and this means that inevitably there is greater potential for these closing, putting more stress and anxiety on people who are already suffering because of illness. I think given the potential knock-on effects of dispensing at a loss, it would be pertinent to know if this government has any plans to support these pharmacies financially when they're exposed to these significantly higher drug costs. Thank you, Deep Class.